Hey, let me ask you something. When's the last time you sat down with your family, fully present, no phone, no work emails, no distractions? Welcome to Beyond the Rut, the podcast about helping married Christian men create a life worth living in your faith, family, and career. I'm your host, Jerry Dugan, the author of the book by the same title of the show, Beyond the Rut, Create a Life Worth Living in Your Faith, Family, and Career. Join me as we dive into week 3 of the Beyond the Rut journey, which is going to focus this week on time for what or who matters. So grab a notebook and a pen, and let's get started. Now, for many of us, the hustle of daily life leaves our family time pushed to the margins. We tell ourselves, I'll make time tomorrow. But tomorrow turns into next week, and next week turns into next month. And before we know it, the people who matter most are getting the least of our time and attention. And think about this. If you say maybe a lot when somebody asks, hey, can we go to the store, Dad? Hey, can we go shopping, Dad? And you're like, hey, maybe. Now, after a while, maybe becomes no, not really, but you just can't say no. But what if you just stopped and turned to your child and say, you know what? Let's go for an hour or two. But I need to get back to this when we're done. That says a lot. Even just a big hug. And, remind me in an hour. But you got to uphold that promise. So in this episode, we're going to tackle this big question. How can you prioritize family without losing momentum in your career or your other responsibilities? Because I know you're already saying it. Well, Jerry, I've got this important thing I got to work on. Yes. But when you're 20 years down the road and your kids are living on their own and you're wondering, why is it they're not connected with me? Or why is it my wife is so frustrating? This is where it pays off. The work you do today is going to have an impact 15, 20, 30 years down the road. So this is why this all matters. And chances are you're still listening because you're curious. What's going to come out of Jerry's mouth? Is it going to be baloney or is it going to be something helpful? Well, that's for you to decide. We'll talk about how to align your time with your values and make family moments more intentional and overcome those distractions that threaten to steal those moments away. So that's what we're going to be talking about in this episode. Now, chances are, you're at the dinner table and that job you just left is already sending you emails and requesting reports. We got this big thing first thing in the morning. And it's like, where was this when I was still in the office wondering if you needed anything else before I left? And, it's like the illusion of, taking care of the family. Yeah, go ahead and go spend time with your family. Oh, but by the way, answer this as soon as you see it. From a leadership perspective, I think that's just poor. It's poor leadership. You should have planned better. Yeah, you're leaning on the loyalty of your staff and the fear of them losing their jobs to really come through for you. So if you're a leader who does that to your people, you either got to stick up for your people or step down and let somebody else lead or become a better leader. Because I'll tell you from personal experience, when I saw this ever since I was in the Army, that the units that seem to have the highest rates of morale, performance, promotions, success in general, and quite possibly the lowest rates of divorce, were the units where the guy at the very top, the leader at the top, the commander, man or woman, prioritized family time, prioritized personal wellness. Because in doing that, you now have a soldier who is fit and willing to go above and beyond during the mission because they know you got that trust. They can trust you to really look out for them and their needs. And that's so huge. And it's in the little everyday things. So I would notice that. And the units that had high rates of what we call AWOL, absent without leave. So people running away from the job who wind up getting arrested and going to jail because they violated their contract with the U.S. government. Yeah, that happens in the military if you didn't know. Highest rates of divorce. Like you'd have entire platoons of 16 to 30 men or women or both who had been dubbed the divorce platoon because morale was so poor in that subunit that their spouses were leaving them. And now they're quagmired and bogged down in custody battles and, alimony and how does my check get split up now? Those kinds of things. Those types of units, that leader at the top was the type of leader who didn't prioritize family, but instead was struggling with home life as well and was taking it out on the unit. Man, we got to go out to the field for 3 weeks. Why? Because we got to be up tempo. We got to be high speed, low drag. We got to be the best unit out there. The reality was, I don't have the courage to face my wife to handle my issues. So I'm going to use the government as a crutch and go out of town for 3 weeks. But I can't go alone, so I got to take 100-something other people with me and ruin their lives as well. And then we're going to be hardcore, hard-nosed, and anybody who doesn't want to be this way, I'm going to basically make your life hell. And that's what happens. So that is what I noticed about, 1, leadership, but also 2, quality of life, that if I took the time to take care of my family, 1, I'm more fulfilled, and 2, as a leader, I'm passing that on to my staff. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be consistent. If it's good enough for me, it's good enough for my team. And then what I see as a result, because I'm willing to let go of that control over everybody and everything, everybody's actually doing more and doing better. And then there's just the personal aspect of it. You know, in my early days of men's ministry and being a Christian, I started to notice that there were men in my groups, my men's groups, who were in their mid-50s, late 50s. They'd been divorced once or twice. And out of nowhere, they would just open up and talk about the realization that they don't have a solid connection and relationship with their kids. And then as a result, they don't know who their grandkids are. And if they could do it all over again, they wish they could go back in time and respect their mother during the divorce, after the divorce, all those things, and be a better man, even if they couldn't save the marriage, to at least be more respectful and be more present. But what they did was they felt like they had to work, that they had to be a man, and all these things that really were detrimental to their lives, their fulfillment, and it impacted their own families in ways they didn't want to be that kind of impact. They wanted to have more of a positive presence and more of a positive legacy, and the result was the opposite. So we got to ask ourselves, where does our time go today? Where is our time going today? Because where our time goes today really is going to have an impact on what type of life we have 15, 20, 30 years from now. I'm now creeping up slowly on the age of 50. My kids are grown up. They're out of the nest. And this is kind of crazy. My son and his wife, Kat, shared with us that they have a baby on the way. So by 9 months from the time this episode goes out, I'm going to be known as Pop. That's my grandpa nickname. My wife is going to be Lolly, so it's going to be Lolly and Pop. I'm excited. We got a grandbaby on the way. I'm reaching that stage of life, and some of my college friends are like, what the heck, dude? Yeah, because you are still raising kids. You started later than I did, and that's okay. That's where you are. Now, we're talking about where does the time go? And I'm sorry I'm all popcorny and excited here, but I'm very passionate about this topic. Where does the time go? And chances are you don't know where your time is going. I struggle with this all the time, and I'm 49, guys, or I'm going to be 49. But here's the first step. To prioritizing your family is to understand where your time is actually spent. Now, in my book, Beyond the Rut, I wrote in it, we all get the same 24 hours in a day, but how we spend those hours reveals what we value most. Now, for me, when I was in my late 20s, a lot of my time was really work and home. And then I had some hobbies. I played video games. And something I was noticing was I was so enthralled in my video games. And it's okay to have a hobby, guys. It's not okay to have a hobby the way I had this hobby, that I was so into video games that I could basically close out my entire family and be in this world of the video game for a good 7 or 8 hours. And I was missing out on things like shopping trips, just hanging out with the kids, watching their favorite show with them. And it was an aha moment that my wife opened up to me, and I was like, no. And I looked at the clock. I'm like, wait, it's 9 p.m. already? When are we having dinner? And it's like, we already had dinner. I'm like, oh. So that was something that allowed me to say, I don't like that. That's not the kind of dad I want to be. I've said this for a long time. So what do I need to do? Well, rather than tell my family to suck it up, let me have a hobby and just deal with it, I really had to ask myself, what matters more to me? That I win this video game, or that I hang out with my kids and I hang out with my wife and I get to spend more time with them? So that's why we really got to take a good look at where our time is going. We all have the same 24 hours in a day, but how we spend those hours reveals what we value most. And at that time, I was valuing a video game, programming, and disconnecting than actually being engaged. Now, it's easy to think we're spending enough time with our family, but when we take a closer look, our work demands, taking errands, other distractions, like for me, those video games, often take over. And so we got to ask ourselves, how do we, one, reduce those distractions? One thing I loved doing was incorporating our kids into our errands. My wife and I would turn a simple trip to the grocery store as a mini date night. And then if we wanted total chaos, we brought the kids along. If we didn't, we dropped them off at grandma's house where we tag teamed it, that kind of thing. But that's what you do. What kind of man goes grocery shopping with his wife? The kind of man who wants more time with his wife to have more opportunity for quality moments with his wife. That's the kind of man who goes grocery shopping with his wife. Now, here are some common time drains that we face. Endless work emails and projects. I know for me, as cell phones became more prevalent, it became kind of cool. Like I can answer these emails before I even get into the office tomorrow. But at what cost? I was spending more time on my work, outside of work, instead of with my family. And I was working on projects and brainstorming things, and I was leaving out my coworkers in these brainstorming projects and these projects in general. So I'm kind of cutting off ties with coworkers, and I'm cutting off connection time with my family to answer emails and doing projects. And that might be the same for you. Now, more appropriate today that I deal with myself, maybe you do too, is scrolling through social media or watching TV, or if you're really addicted to dopamine like I am, doing both at the same time, sort of. Man, there was a good while when I could just turn off my phone and take it off the table. And that's something I would do, is I would turn off my phone, take it off the table. Everybody else would have their phones up. And I just remember looking at everybody and saying, hey, I'm not going to tell you have to put your phones away, but I'm looking at each one of you, and not one of you is looking at each other. And you probably think, well, Dad, you're on your phone. Because I remember somebody wanted to say that to me, and they looked up and they realized my phone was not even on the table. And this was like later in my kids' lives, before they left the nest, in a sense. So yeah, we can really get sucked in. Those phones are designed to give us those dopamine hits, to keep us on those apps, so that the big companies behind those apps can keep collecting data on our preferences, on our tastes, the ads that we engage with, the types of topics we engage with. All that data goes into a big cloud of other data, and then we start, as a commercial, commerce-driven society, start driving ads to you off of the things you do on social media. Anyway, that's not conspiracy theory. That is what we sign off for, to use these platforms. Is yes, you can track my information. You can use it for third-party stuff. And they sell big data trends to other companies like marketing firms to target their advertising. So it's there. Now, another thing for me, I'm a recovering people pleaser. And I also tend to overestimate my skills and my management of time skills specifically. We might take on too many obligations outside the home. So 3 common time drains: endless work emails and projects, scrolling through social media or watching TV, saying yes to too many obligations outside the home. And the truth is, we don't find time for what matters. And I talk about this in my book. We have to make time for what matters. So my first reflection question for you is, if someone looked at your schedule right now for the past week, what would they say your priorities are? That's a tough one. That, you might be like me right now, like start adding stuff into my calendar that makes me look good. But if you got to doctor that up, then that's for you to decide how you want to proceed from there. Now, what we want to do is align your time with your values. So if your family is a top priority, your schedule should reflect that. So you might be asking, well, how do I make that shift? Number 1, define what matters most. So what does success in your family look like? Is it eating dinner together? Is it being present at all their personal or their important events like school assemblies, sports games, award ceremonies during the school day? Is it praying together every morning or every night? Can you cram some of these together, like praying together at the dinner table and then having family time at the dinner table? What is success? Like, what's that family time looking like for you? Um, and just take a moment, write down up to three specific things you want to prioritize for your family this week. Now, number two, schedule family time first. And I learned about this from a guy named Brian Buffini. He's a real estate coach, so he helps real estate salespeople boost their sales by doing more marketing. Really cool guy. You can find more about him at buffiniandcompany.com. But Brian Buffini, Buffini. That's not important. This is the thing that's important. I went to one of his Turning Point retreats many years ago, like 2006, 2007. And was something he said that he does with his wife, Beverly, is that they sit down once a week, typically on a Monday or a Sunday at like 4 a.m. They're already up at that time. But once a week, they share each other's calendars and they say, hey, this is what I have going on my calendar. How about you? And she'll share her calendar. They were still doing their calendars on paper. I don't know if they still do it that way or not now. But again, the point is they shared their calendars with each other. Their first question really was, is there anything going on in the family that I don't have on my calendar that I should know about? And they're swapping information because they have 3 kids and those kids might talk to one parent and that parent forget to tell the other parent or assume that the kid told the other parent for you. So this level sets that. So now Beverly is able to tell Brian, hey, you actually missed this assembly. Do you want to go? He's like, absolutely. So he's moving something off his calendar or later in the calendar to put that block in there. So he's scheduling things for his family first. Top priority for him. Put family events in there. But he and his wife also like to go out and go on dates together. Dinner, movie, events, whatever. They would put that in their calendar as well. And that would have top priority over everything else. So what are the things with the family that would take precedent over everything else? And then they would just call their clients and move things around. Number 3, say no to the unimportant stuff. You can try to say yes to everything, but the reality is you can't say yes to everything, and because you can't do everything. Learning to say no to activities, events, tasks that don't align with your values is going to be huge in freeing up that time so that you're making time for what matters most. Proverbs 16 verse 3 says, commit to the Lord whatever you do, and he will establish your plans. So if you want, let God kind of guide you and nudge you and say, hey, what do you think's most important here? You want to prioritize hanging out with the dudes for poker night, but you have a daughter who needs you to take her on her birthday excursion, whatever it is. So if you were faced with something like that, which would be a better payoff for you in the long run? You might think, I got to impress the guys. I can't let them know I'm whipped. A family man, they're not going to be by your bedside when you die. The real bros might be, but a lot of these guys won't be. Or, it's not going to matter if, 20 years down the road, you got your dude bro, but you don't have that relationship with your child or your grandchildren. Some nights you just may have to make that decision. That's not to say you won't have friends ever, just priorities, Now, I know a friend, this guy, he's very committed to be there for his kids. At a minimum, at their award ceremonies at school, and some of them play football, like in high school and middle school. So he wants to be there for all their games. He might miss practices, but he's going to be there for their games. And so while he's driving to like the Rio Grande Valley or to San Antonio to catch one of these road games, he's going. But, he's also left work early. Like he's told his boss, hey, my son's playing in a football game in San Antonio. I want to be there. That means I have to leave now, like at 3, or I got to leave later today at 3. Whatever it is to make this happen. And they talk through KPIs, and he's in his car and he's driving to meet up with his wife. And he'll call me on his way to meet up with his wife, like, hey, I'm getting ready to head up to San Antonio. Just wanted to see how you're doing. I'm like, well, what are you up to? And he's like, I'm going to go see my son play football in San Antonio. And we're going to get there a little bit early. We're going to have dinner together, just him and his wife. And I'm like, that is really cool. So here's a guy. He could have worked late like anybody else, but he said, nope, I'm going to leave early. I'm going to trust my people to get their job done. I'm going to trust them to take care of themselves. I'm going to meet up with my wife. We're going to have a little mini excursion in another city, and we're going to see our son play and cheer him on. and then we're going to travel back together. That's him. That's a man prioritizing his family, making time for his kids, and understanding what matters most to him. Now, I've asked him before, what if your boss told you to stay late? What would you do? And my friend, he said, well, I would have my letter of resignation ready, and I would start looking for a new job that did support me in having this work-life balance and appreciating my family time. So he was really ready to hit the kill switch on his career, and I've done it too. When I left my career in corporate healthcare, the phrase that launched that ship was my wife saying to me, I want my husband back. And when she said that to me and told me why, there was no hesitation. Boom. Letter of resignation ready to go. I'm done out of this job in the 30 days. I'm going to give 30-day notice. I really hope the guy terminates me ASAP. Unfortunately, he had me stick around for the full 30 days. That's a whole different story. But I want to move on. And this is about making the most of your family time. So you've created the space for your family. You've already defined how you want to make that time meaningful. But now it's how do you make that time meaningful? And here are just a few simple steps. Number one, be fully present. So here are the simple things on how that looks. Put your phone away. If TV is on, turn it off or turn it down. And give your family undivided attention. My family, we have, I think, last time my wife gave me a count that I paid attention to, sorry, Liv, was 58 board games. My kids, their significant others, know us for our board games, our collection of board games and card games, and they think this is crazy. Their families were not like this. And our kids, this is all they know, that we'll play games together like Skip-Bo and Sky Joe, Monopoly, Memory, all these games, and they have so many memories tied into this. And I'm not just talking about when they were little kids. We're talking about in their teenage years as well. And even in their teenage years, their friends would also play. And I think we still have Pretty Princess. And my daughter loves playing that because, it's an excuse for her to get her dad to wear kids' jewelry. And she's 21 now. It's kind of embarrassing, but it's for her. So kids and spouses, they notice our distraction. And they also notice when we're fully engaged. So, and they start to model that, especially our kids. They start to say, this is the way I want to be a parent. So number two, create family traditions. So we got game night. We also did Rosebud Thorn at the dinner table. Christmas has a ton of cute little ones that my daughter and my wife would do. But these traditions give your family something to look forward to and bond over. And they even tell these stories to their significant others and their families when they grow up. So I talked about weekly game nights, family prayer time. We prayed at dinner. Saturday morning pancakes is something I do. And for a while I was really into it. I was doing shapes, what do you guys want? And they're like, I want a wizard hat. I'm like, okay, I want Mickey ears. My daughter wanted Mickey Mouse pancakes every weekend for she probably only wanted it for 2 or 3 days, but I gave it to her for 5 months straight. There was a time we did a trip to Walt Disney World, and I made the pancakes in the shape of different Disney World icons, and then I put a number inside each one. So I would have a squirt bottle, and I would squirt out, when we were 7 days out, the number 7, you got to do it backwards because when you flip the pancake. But you let that cook for a little bit, then you pour the pancake on top. So the first little squiggle you put in gets darker, and then the other pancake goes on top. So if that's something you want to do, that's cool. A little countdown. So my kids remember to this day Dad's countdown pancakes for vacations. So it's something you may want to do for yourself. It's up to you. Do what you want. Number 3, celebrate the small moments. So not every family moment has to be a grand event. But sometimes the most meaningful memories are made during a walk around the block, a bedtime story, or a dance party in the living room. For me, we would do the occasional camp out, blanket fort in the living room. We'd encapsulate the TV so it was inside our so-called tent, and we'd throw the mattresses on the floor, and our dog would even join us, and that was so cool. We have photos of this. Something my kids still laugh about to this day is when we would tuck them in for bed, our kids would get all excited and say, Dad, tell us a story from your childhood. And so I would tell them a story from when I was growing up, and they're relating to this and they still remember this. So those are the small moments. We used to take our kids out one-on-one. So my wife would take our daughter and I would take our son, and the next weekend we would swap. We did that one summer. So that's something to consider. What are these little things that you could do with your kids and with your spouse that are just meaningful? One of the things that my wife still talks about to this day is that one of her favorite dates between the two of us was we went to a place in Corpus Christi called Boat and Net. So Boat and Net. Old school fast food, fish and fried shrimp with fries. So old school that their ordering intercom wasn't an actual electric speaker. It was a PVC pipe. You shot it in a box, and it was almost like tin cans with string in a way. So cool. But anyway, we ordered some Boat and Net. We drove out to the Shoreline Boulevard in Corpus Christi, and we grabbed a picnic table, and we had dinner together, just the two of us. And she loves that. It was an $8 lunch or $8 dinner, and we walked along the shoreline, and she just thought, we may not have a lot of money, but we make time for each other, and we're rich in that respect. And she still talks about it to this day. So it doesn't have to be big or grand. It can be little. It's about quality time. It's about connecting and being present. Number 4, lead spiritually. So as the spiritual leader of your home, model faith for your family. So a lot of us think that means we got to rule the roost. We got to, what I say goes. I'm the master of the domain here. But if you look at what Jesus did and how he modeled faith for the disciples, that's kind of what we're supposed to do. Be servant leaders. So we pray together, pray alone. Let them see you walk away if they need to. But that prayer time, that alone prayer time, is really between you and God. You got to have that. But, if there's scripture that stands out to you, share it at dinner time when you pray with your family. Talk about what God's doing in your life. Ask them if they see God working in their lives. So, action step for the week. Plan one intentional family moment for the week. It could be dinner, where everyone shares a highlight of their day, a no-phone family walk, or reading a Bible story together, depending on the age of your kids and so on. And if that's something that could be pulled off without seeming too cheesy, because you want it to be authentic and you want to build that habit as well. So, that's kind of a neat thing there. A no-phone family dinner even is pretty cool. Now, at the end of the day, your career, your hobbies, and even your personal goals, they all pale in comparison to the impact you can have on your family. And I want you to understand that time is a gift, and how you spend it matters deeply. So keep that in mind, take it to heart. I hope this episode really inspires you, helps you get some things aligned. Maybe you already knew this stuff, and this is just a reminder. That's fine. That's okay. I don't have to be the guy that's like, oh, Jerry told me. No, this is about what you do with it. A little heads up for next week. We're going to build on this by talking about marriage as a partnership and how to support each other's growth and keep your relationship strong with the ups and downs of life. So until then, remember, life is too short to live stuck in a rut. So let's go beyond it. Take care.